Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wedding Tip Wednesday. So this week, our podcast is going to be a little different because I'm going to talk about me and how I have arrived to where I have arrived in my career as a photographer and as a businesswoman, as a product owner. And I think, certainly over the last 5 or 6 weeks when I have been doing a lot of interviews with different journalists and television stations around my wedding book, I was asked a whole lot of questions about my personal life and how I got to where I am now. And I just thought, you know what, there is a story here. And I often get asked on Instagram from you guys, about different aspects of my life. And while I don't normally go into it, I'd answer the odd question here and there. I probably am going to delve a little bit deeper today. So I hope you enjoy this. One of the questions I suppose I was asked recently was like your background. What journey did you take to arrive to where you are now? And, and did you always want to be a photographer, and how did you get into your photography career? So I suppose going back to when I was a child, I always loved using the camera, the camera that took the film that your mum or dad might have had at home when you were growing up. And I was always kind of the one using it. And I just thought it was just gorgeous. And I remember my dad, God rest him, he went out and he bought this incredible camera, and it was like one of those long cameras, and like it had a little spool on one end and a little spool on the other, and the little bit of film went across the top, and that was like the roll of film that went in. And I'm sure he spent a few bob on it, and he wasn't loaded. He was a bricklayer, my dad. And he worked very, very, very hard. He used to go out at stupid o'clock in the morning to do his work, and then he would come back filthy dirty in the evening, from his work. And so I'm sure he didn't earn that much money, but you know what? He gave us everything that he could possibly give us. I remember even looking back now, and I'm sure he wasn't on a very high salary, but he had a car. And, my mother would have worked part-time, when we were growing up, but he was the supplier, and he just worked really, really hard. But anyway, going back to his camera. So I used to use his film all the time. And then, when a special occasion like a communion or a confirmation, if we were going somewhere, and he'd pick up the camera and go to use it, and all the film would be gone because I was taking pictures with it all along. So I suppose I've always loved taking photographs. And then I got pregnant when I was quite young. I had my gorgeous son Dean when I was 17 and a half. So I'm a hard worker, and my dad's name was Frank. And I 100% take after him for hard work, because he used to say to us when we were growing up, nobody will give you anything for nothing. You have to work for everything you have, and you have to work hard to get to where you want to be. And how true is that? I didn't just start taking photographs with his camera when I was 4 and then just become a photographer overnight. I worked my ass off. I am a very, very hard worker. So I suppose I definitely do take after him. I had Dean then, as I said, when I was 17 and a half, and I was, I always had 2 jobs when I was growing up, and I just kind of felt I didn't want to leave him. I wanted to mind him myself, but I also wanted to work. So while he was a very small baby, I took on a job, and I minded children in their own home, and I used to cook their dinner and pick them up from school, and I was allowed to have him with me as well, which was great. So I was able to bring my baby to work. And then I would work there until 6 o'clock in the evening. And I remember I had another job in the evening in a chipper that was I was renting out an apartment, and the chipper was right beside the apartment that I worked in. And Dean would be minded and run down the road at 6 o'clock from the house that I minded the children in, and I had to be in work in the chipper at 6:30 till 2 in the morning. And I did that 5 days a week for quite a number of years. And then I went on and I started to work in a video shop. And that was great because Dean was a little bit older. And I worked in a video shop during the day. And I worked in a nightclub in the evening called Faces nightclub in Churchtown. It was so funny when I think back to my days there. And I left Faces nightclub in Churchtown and then I went to Lily's Bordello. So I had my video shop job during the day and I had my nighttime gig. So it was always two jobs. So you have to work hard to get to where you want to be. I can still hear him saying that to us, you know. And then I left my video shop day and I started to work at 98 FM, which is where I met my lovely husband, Martin. And while I worked at 98 FM, God, I don't know how I did it. Like I had Dean and, 98 FM was the best job, like the best job ever, apart from what I'm doing now, where I had to be in work. So I was one of those thunder girls. So I used to drive one of the Jeeps in 98 FM and I would have to be at the station every morning for 7 o'clock. Because we used to have to go out on the road and we would have to bring one of the DJs with us and they would do the kind of the live links from the road. And we used to do, that job was amazing. We did so many different things while we were on the road. And then I worked probably there until maybe 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. I'd go back home and 3 of those nights then I would end up in Lily's Bordello on Grafton Street where I would have to work until I think it was 2:30 I finished. And I always remember driving up through Rathmines to get home in the middle of the night going into the morning and looking at the clock. I don't even know what the tower is called in Rathmines. I always remember that clock was always 2:45 a.m. when I was driving by it and I had to be up at 6 a.m. to get ready for work again. So when I think about it, like I've great memories of working. But during my time at 98 FM, we used to have to take photographs of what we were doing during the day and kind of submit like a report at the end of the week for whatever client we were working for. So I always remember one of the clients gave us Nash's spring water that we used to have to give out in the mornings and in the afternoon traffic as well. And I would have to take photographs of where we were. I was given that job and I loved it. And I loved getting down really low and taking shots from different angles, putting the report together at the end of the week, giving it to my line manager, who is still my friend to this day, Andrina. And she would then forward it on to the marketing department. So I suppose photography really was always there, you know. And when I left 98 FM then, I started to work in an advertising agency over in Sandymount. And I loved that job too. I loved it. So I worked there part-time because then I had a baby, Matthew. And that was great. So Martin used to kind of look after him in during the time that I was kind of working there. And then he would go and do his TV3 gig in the afternoon. So while I was working there, I used to have to take photos too, which was brilliant, you know. And that was part of my job there too. And then I decided I wanted to take photos then and, you know, like maybe become a photographer. I don't know, but I just loved taking photographs. And I used to borrow a camera off one of my friend's friend. She had this, like she loaded this woman and had this fabulous camera. And anytime I was ever going to a communion or a christening or a confirmation or a family occasion, I would ask her, could I borrow her camera? And I knew how to work the camera. I knew all the manual settings. I loved it. And it just produced these amazing photographs. And everybody just used to love the photographs that I took. And I just got used to, and I never charged anyone. I just used to get great joy out of taking photographs and creating imagery of people that they could look back at and remember that occasion. And love their images and put like a little album. I probably spent a fortune, put a little album together and then give it to them. And it was just incredible. So then, you know, I started to earn a little bit of money from my photographs, which was brilliant, you know, and I loved portraits. I used to love kind of capturing people, you know, when they didn't know the camera was on them. And then I just used to love capturing their personality in the photograph so that they'd look back at the image afterwards and go, oh my God, that's really me, you know. And I just used to get great joy out of that. And I thought, God, there has to be money to be made here. So slowly but surely, I started to take photographs in my children's school. And I used to go around creches and photograph babies and And it kind of went from there. And I started photographing newborn babies for people. And then I suppose roll it on. Martin's sister was getting married and she said to me, God, we just love your work. Like, we just really love your images. Will you do the wedding? And I said, absolutely no way. I would never do a wedding. You must be joking. Too stressful. And I suppose what I thought was stressful at the time was back then, 20 years ago, and I'm not saying they were all like this, but photographers could have been wedding photographers could have been very, very cranky. And I don't think I have a cranky bone in my body. So I thought, I can't do that. No way. And then I just kind of thought about it because it was a very small family occasion. They were literally just having immediate family and a couple of friends. And I thought, you know what, maybe I will do it. And I did do it. And I suppose I approached it the same way as I was approaching taking photographs of people and capturing personalities. And I just said, look, can I just document what's going on and then just get a few family photos and just, create memories from the day. And that's exactly what they wanted. So I was shooting film at the time, so you couldn't see even what you were photographing. You just had to trust what you were doing was correct. And I remember getting the images developed and doing like a small little album for them. And there was so much more. I had so many more photographs to show them. And I will never, ever forget the reaction when I showed them the pictures for the first time. And I got such great joy out of that I thought, you know what? I think I could do this. I think I could be a wedding photographer. I think people might like this approach because I'm not just going along on the day and saying, so this is what I'm doing and I'm only doing this. And if anyone gets in my way, I'm going to give out to them and I'm going to boss people around. If they work with me and allow me to document their day as it's happening and get the family photos and all the other photos they want, I think this could be a career. And within a very short space of time, I did another wedding. And her friend recommended me to somebody else. And I was still working part-time in the advertising agency that I loved. And I think within 2 years, I used to get 20 days holidays a year. And I didn't have enough holiday days to take to see to it that I could do all the weddings that I had taken on. So I remember going home and saying to Martin, now I know Martin works on the TV and he worked on the TV. And I remember saying to him, I think I'm going to have to give up my job. And he said, oh no. And he's great at pushing me and encouraging me. He said, God, are you sure? And like, I suppose when you're used to a regular wage coming in every week and you're paying your bills, like it's really handy. But I just said, no, I think I'm going to have to give up the job because I don't have enough holiday days left to take for all the weddings that I have coming in. So I kind of left it at that. And I waited another couple of weeks and I didn't say anything. And I just decided this particular day I was going to go down to my boss and tell him I had to leave. So I did. I went down and his name was Alan Kieran, I remember. And I said to Alan, I have something to tell you. I have to leave. And I told him why I had to leave. And he was really disappointed that I was leaving because I just got on really, I was the receptionist in there, but I had so many other little jobs to do as well. So there was nobody in that advertising agency. It was called Irish International in Sandymount. There was no one in the agency that I didn't know because I used to answer the phone for them all. So we had a great little going away party and that was it. It was like as if I can't swim, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows that I have spoken about it on Instagram before. I'd love to know how to swim. And one of these days, I'm going to get someone to teach me. I have to get over my fear of water first. But I felt like I was kind of standing on the edge of a diving board and someone just pushed me in. And I pushed myself in. I handed in my notice and off I went. And I started to take on more weddings. I took on, I remember doing the wedding journal show that happened in City West. They took me onto Ireland AM, which was brilliant. And I got to speak about what I do and how I approach weddings and how I love to document the emotion that just naturally unfolds on the day without making it happen. Daddy seeing his daughter for the first time in her wedding dress, that still gets me to this day because I think of my poor dad. Because my dad died actually the day before my 17th birthday. So he didn't get to walk any of us up the aisle. So I think every time I see a daddy looking at his little girl for the first time in her wedding dress, I think of my own dad. And it's quite emotional. So I just talked about that and I talked about all the lovely emotion that I can capture on a wedding day. And I think within 2 years, like I had, each year I had like 60, 70 weddings booked in, which was incredible. And going back to just before I left Irish International, my son Matthew was in school with this boy called Jack, and Jack's mum owned a premises in Fashion City, and she had just bought her premises, and she is a bridal designer. And she said to me, like, we have a space upstairs you could rent if you wanted to. And I remember saying, you must be joking. I could never afford that. But she sowed the seed, and I think this is what happens with me in life. Somebody will sow a seed and then I'll think about it and I'll work it out. And I'll sort of think, well, can I afford that? Well, I need to take on this amount of work to be able to afford that. And if I do that, then I can take on more work, and then it will lead to, and that's the way I think. So I took on that space in Fashion City, and it was just a big room. Like, it was just a room. There was nothing in it. It was just incredible. I took it on, and Martin again, bought me equipment for it. And by the way, just going back to that camera that my friend's friend used to give me a loan of to take photographs, going back like a few years previously. I remember saying to Martin, I'd love a camera like this, but I'm never going to be able to afford it, because I was on a part-time wage, and every cent that he had from TV kind of went into our family. And I remember one Christmas then, or I think it was a birthday or Christmas, he came along and he gives me this box, and it was all wrapped up. And I opened it, and it was the same camera that I had been borrowing from that friend of a friend for such a long time. And he said to me, and now you've no excuse. So that's kind of, Martin really, really helped me, So anyway, going back to the big open room in Fashion City, and I had nothing, I had absolutely nothing except a camera. And Martin comes along again, and, this week's, or this month's wages, anything separate from it, I'm going to get you a few lights. So he bought me a light, and next month he bought me soft boxes and umbrellas. And I look at it now and I think back to kind of the journey that I had from those days in Irish International in Sandymount, and taking on Martin's sister's wedding and believing in myself that I could shoot weddings, and loving my work, and other people believing me and trusting in me. And I look at my beautiful studio now, and I just can't believe I did it. I just actually can't believe I did. I get emotional sometimes thinking about it. But it was from hard work, working hard, making sure that everything I have, I work for. I don't owe anybody any money. I don't take loans. And I just kind of think back to my dad and how hard he worked, and how he instilled that in me as I was a child growing up, that you have to work hard for every single thing that you get, because nobody's going to give you anything for nothing. I'm sure there are people out there, sometimes people think, how did she get that? And there are negative thoughts out there. I got it all because I worked hard for it. I'm good at what I do, and I love what I do. And then one of the journalists recently said to me, like, you have a whole newborn baby business as well as a wedding business, and you've also got newborn baby products and wedding products. How did that happen? Again, I think it just happened organically. So how my wedding product business happened was that I was at weddings, and I'm absolutely obsessed with candles and scents and smells that relax me. And I always remember there was no wedding candles out there. There was one particular wedding candle, and I just felt it didn't photograph very well. I wasn't mad about the scent. And I used to say this to Martin all the time, just mad about that scent, and it just doesn't photograph very well. It's always part of the detail on a wedding morning. And he said to me one day, would you not bring out your own? I said, bring out my own wedding candle? Are you mad? And then again, he sowed the seed, and I thought, how could I do that now? Bring out my own wedding candle. Oh my God, I know what I'd like to do. And then I'm not good at drawing, but I was kind of drawing out what I'd like, and I was designing it, and I was kind of putting it out there into the universe. And even though I don't do that very often, think of the universe and putting things out there, I did put it out there. And I have my drawings. I still have the drawings. And I wanted like a white sprayed jar with the wedding candle by Jenny McCarthy on it, something really simple in silver. And I even designed the packaging that I wanted it to go into. And I wanted it to arrive in a box, and you open the box and you get the gift bag, and then you get this lovely cylinder and you take out the candle. And I wanted a weighted silver lid on the top of the candle that you could have engraved with your names on it. You could give it a gift. You could use it as an anniversary. I can't keep that candle in stock now. So, thank you to everybody who's bought it and who believes in me. And then it went on from there, babies coming into my studio, and I could just see those baby grows with the poppers on them. And when you're changing your baby's nappy and you have to kind of fix the poppers, and if you get one of those silver poppers wrong, you have to open the whole thing again and start again. And I remember thinking, why isn't there just a zip around the nappy area and another zip down the baby grow to take the baby out of it if you're changing them out of it, and the zip around the nappy that you just pop the legs out to change the nappy, pop them back in? And I thought, wonder could I design one and get someone to make it for me? And I did, designed it, decided that's what I'm going to do. What'll I call it? And Jen in my office, I remember we were sitting down for like ages trying to think of a name for it. So we came up with a name and Jen really helped me with that. And it's called the Zipsy Grow, Zipzee by Jenny McCarthy. And now that's out and it's white, and you can also kind of like there's little cuffs on it, grey cuffs, pink cuffs or blue cuffs. And I can't keep that in stock either. So it kind of went from there to a baby bag and recently to my wedding book. And I look back to where I came from, borrowing a camera from a friend's friend and going around creches and taking pictures and earning money and building my way up the ladder. And here I am now after just writing a wedding book with all of that information that I have in my head that couples need to know for their big day, from the time they get engaged right through until they do their first dance that night. And I wrote the book. And during my time, I suppose, I had a brain tumour 12 years ago that unfortunately grew back last year, and I had to have that removed as well. So I've been through a couple of health scares too. Martin's been through a health scare. He's had 5 stents put in around his heart. So we've been through a lot of journeys all the way along, but life is good. And would I change anything if I could go back? And what would I tell my 21-year-old self now? If I could go back and just speak to Jenny at age 21, what would I say? I would say, Jenny, all will be well. Stop worrying about the small stuff. Enjoy yourself more. Take more time off and be kind to yourself.